Good morning and welcome to the 2023 Virtual Annual General Meeting of the College of Physicians and Surgeons of BC. My name is Anne Priestman. By way of introduction, I have been involved with the college as a board member since 2015. I'm currently serving my third year as the board's president and chair. I am a specialist in internal medicine and endocrinology and metabolism, and have been practicing for more than 25 years in New Westminster. I would like to begin by acknowledging that this annual general meeting is being chaired on the unceded and traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Squamish, the Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations. I also acknowledge that all of you attending today remotely are located on territories of First Nations across this great province. We acknowledge the rights and title of BC First Nations whose territories span across the province. We acknowledge these territories and recognize that laws, governance, and health systems tied to lands and waters have existed here since time immemorial. We also acknowledge the unique and distinct rights, including rights of health and wellness of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from elsewhere in Canada who now live in British Columbia. As leaders in the health system, we have responsibilities to these rights under international, national, and provincial law. Participating with me today during these proceedings are Dr. Heidi Otter, Registrar and CEO, Mr. Graham Kierstead, Chief Legal Counsel and Deputy Registrar of Legal, and Mr. Mike Epp, Chief Operating Officer. I will now call the 2023 Annual General Meeting to order. I declare that we have a quorum of registrants in virtual attendance and that we are duly constituted for the transaction of our business today, which includes adoption of the minutes for the Annual General Meeting on September 23rd, 2022, presentation of the board-approved audited financial statements for the period ending February 28th, 2023, appointment of the auditors for the current fiscal year, and in memoriam for registrants who passed away during the past fiscal year between March 1st of 2022 and February 28th of 2023. A president's report and a word from the registrar, followed by other business and questions from registrants, after which we will conclude this annual general meeting. For those of you joining by video, if you have a question during the proceedings, please use the Q&A feature found on the ribbon at the bottom of your screen. You can ask questions at any time, and we will answer them when we get to other business. I will now ask for a motion to adopt the minutes from last year's annual general meeting held on September 23rd of 2022, as published on the college website. I will invite you all to cast your vote by selecting one option on your screen and clicking Submit. Here are the results. 79% have approved the minutes. The audited financial statements for the year ending February 28, 2023 have been approved by the board and have been published on the college website. Just as a reminder, if you have a question about the audited financial statements, please use the Q&A feature found on the ribbon at the bottom of your screen, and we will answer when we get to other business. I will now ask for a motion to approve the appointment of the firm KPMG LLP as auditors for the current fiscal year. I invite you all to cast your vote by selecting one option on your screen and clicking Submit. Here are the results. 74% have approved the appointment of the auditors. I will now ask for a moment of silence to remember and pay respect to registrants who passed away during the last fiscal year between March 1st of 2022 and February 28th of 2023. Thank you. At this annual general meeting 2 years ago, I had referenced the coming of a new normal as we were experiencing the change brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic. With the pandemic no longer the dominant backdrop of our lives, the college directed much effort this past year towards laying the long-term foundation of its own new normal as a regulator. Leadership and staff have worked hard to continue modernizing the college and doing their part to address the barriers many patients face in accessing quality health care. I look forward to sharing the results of this work with you and how this work sets up the college to approach the challenges and opportunities of the year ahead, which already appears to be a period of transition. The college remains steadfastly committed to becoming a more equitable, diverse, and inclusive organization. This is especially true when it comes to eliminating the cycle of Indigenous-specific racism that is embedded in our province's healthcare system. In the spring of last year, Dr. Otter and I had the privilege of participating in an Indigenous blanket ceremony with the BC College of Nurses and Midwives. At the ceremony, Indigenous elders accepted and welcomed our two colleges' Indigenous cultural safety, cultural humility, and anti-racism practice standard into Indigenous laws. Following that, the college board participated in its own Indigenous ceremony to renew its pledge to embed cultural safety and humility into the college's regulatory processes. Since then, the college has reached a significant milestone in meeting the board's pledge. A review of the college's formal complaint process by the Castlemaine Group was completed this year. The review identified several key themes that highlight current gaps in the complaints process, which include accessibility, formal versus soft complaints, cultural safety, communication, and resolution and accountability. These findings have been endorsed by the board, and the college is currently reviewing the recommendations and developing an implementation plan to address these gaps. Another significant step in this journey was the launch of the college's new brand in April to replace the college crest, a distinctly colonial symbol that did not reflect the college's values of accessibility and inclusivity. The rebranding is about more than just a new logo. Our brand strategy provides a foundation for how the college will embody inclusivity and accessibility in all aspects of our work as well as interactions with the public and with registrants. This was a multi-year process that involved gathering input from the public, partner organizations, and registrants. I want to thank those of you who contributed your time and perspective to this important project. It should be acknowledged that all this work is taking place during a challenging time for many of us with the physician shortage in our province, which has caused burnout in our profession. In the face of health human resourcing shortages, the college recognizes some registrants may need additional support to interpret and meet the college's standards and guidelines. To that end, the college introduced a new coaching service this past year to support registrants in practice. The coaches act as thinking partners to guide and support registrants as they navigate a situation in medical practice, apply relevant standards and guidelines, identify resources, and arrive at their own solution and action plan. So far, more than 350 residents have benefited from a coaching call since we launched the service. Other supports introduced this past year include the development of a series of online courses to provide registrants with further context and examples of how to apply standards in real-life situations. Courses for other practice standards are currently being developed to build on this initial launch. We are also working closely with the provincial government and other partners to address the physician shortages in our communities. We share the concerns you and other British Columbians have about this ongoing crisis. This past November, the government announced plans to increase the number of international medical graduates practicing in BC by expanding the Practice Ready Assessment Program and adding 2 new classes of licensure. The new associate physician class will allow international medical graduates who are not eligible for full or provisional licensure in BC to work in community-based primary care settings under the supervision of an attending physician. The other new class will allow American Board of Medical Specialists who only have 3 years of residency training to provide services in both community and hospital settings. This includes pediatrics, internal medicine, and emergency medicine. While the results of this work may not be immediate, and much more needs to be done, these are steps in the right direction that can improve access to primary care and ease the load you carry in the health system. We will also be working closely with the government in the year ahead to transition the college to the Health Professions and Occupations Act. The HPOA will replace the Health Professions Act and lays the groundwork for transforming how health regulators will fulfill their public protection mandate. In addition to changing health regulations in BC, the HPOA will change aspects of the college's current operations. We are working to understand the anticipated impacts of these changes and expect much time and effort will be required to transition the college to the new act in the coming year. We will be providing registrants with timely updates about these changes throughout the process. Looking more internally, the college will undergo another transition in the next few months with the retirement of Dr. Heidi Otter in December. Replacing Dr. Otter as the Registrar and CEO will be Dr. Patrick Rowe, who many of you will recognize from his current role as a College Board member. Dr. Otter has been with the college for 19 years, 15 of which were in the role of Registrar and CEO. She was the first female leader of a Canadian medical regulator and has accomplished a great deal during her time with the college. I want to take this opportunity to acknowledge her stellar career and wish her well in her coming retirement. That concludes my report. Thank you again for being with us today. I will now turn it over to Dr. Otter.
Thank you, Anne. This indeed is my last opportunity to address the registrants, and I'm deeply honored and privileged to have been able to serve the public that we protect as being the registrar and CEO of the college for the last 15 years. I have a huge debt of gratitude to the successive boards who've governed the college over these years, as well as the staff at the college, who remain completely and totally committed to their work in protecting the public and ensuring patients receive safe care. Since I qualified as a physician in 1986, I have never seen the medical care system so challenged. While the cracks in our system were there before the pandemic, COVID was not kind, and we have many significant challenges today that will take time to unravel and resolve. I want to thank the registrants who gave unselfishly of themselves, their time, effort, and energy to provide and continue to provide medical care in British Columbia during these challenging times. Medicine is often a thankless profession. Please know that I thank each and every one of you for what you do. Despite our challenges, I am optimistic that through continued collaboration with our key health partners in BC, that both short and long-term solutions will be found to bring sustainable, ethical, equitable, and quality medical care to the citizens of British Columbia. I wish you all the best in your future. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. I will now open the floor to any other business or questions. Just as a reminder, if you have a question, please use the Q&A feature found on the ribbon at the bottom of your screen.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you. So please, yes, put your questions in the Q&A and we will endeavor to answer them. The first question I think I might direct to our Chief Legal Counsel, Mr. Graham Kierstead, with regards to the salary and benefits of the CEO and registrar.
I will unmute. The salary of the CEO and registrar, and in fact, any staff at the college, is personal information of that person. We are not subject to any legislation that would require that to be disclosed. However, if you wish to make an access request under the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, it is probable that you will receive a range of salary, but not the specific salary, but that is Dr. Otter's personal information and will not be disclosed.
Thank you. The next question, the College of Family Physicians of Canada has publicly shared that it plans to proceed with requiring 3-year residency training in family medicine to be eligible for certification. What is the college board hearing from registrants on this matter? What potential holistic hazards and risks does the college anticipate could occur if this was to proceed?
Our board has not actually heard from anybody. And in fact, I've not received any correspondence from any physicians in British Columbia about the proposed CFPC change to their training program. Certainly heard about it yesterday. CBC News had our radio had an online discussion with the incoming president of the CFPC. I think it's an interesting issue, and ultimately one probably that our Ministry of Health is going to have to deal with, as ultimately they will be funding or not the residency positions of that college. But if people would like to write and tell us about it, you know our email address.
Thank you, Dr. Otter. Will U.S. trained anesthesiologists be recognized for full certification with the college?
We actually don't certify. That's a role of certification bodies. They would be eligible for a class of license that we hope to bring in soon, which would be USA certified anesthesiologists.
Thank you. It's hard to ensure continuity of care in the absence of places to intake primary care. What do we do?
We appreciate that the shortage of family physicians, particularly those doing longitudinal primary care, is an issue. But I mean, there are issues across many of the disciplines of medicine that the registrants practice in British Columbia. I just wanted to do a shout out to the doctors of BC and applaud them for their longitudinal payment model that they brought in. It's obviously been, I think, welcome and embraced. And I think that this is an issue for the Family Services Committee at the joint committee between the doctors of BC and the ministry about how to best use the resources that we have. But please be assured, we're trying to create new pathways to licensure that will recognize individuals who can contribute to providing primary care services in British Columbia, be that family physician specialists or associate physicians who would work alongside their family physician supervisors.
Thank you, Dr. Otter. The next question, who is responsible for increasing the number and deciding the mix of residency physicians in BC? If it's not the college or doctors of BC, does it lie with UBC or the Ministry of Health?
Ministry of Health.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? There's nothing appearing in the chat. We'll give you just a few minutes if you have any, because we still have a bit of time. I have another one that's popped up here. How will the college manage patient complaints for being charged for diagnostic tests ordered by physicians that are de-enrolled? Can de-enrolled physicians refer to specialists?
Gosh, the information we have received from the Medical Services Commission is that a physician who is de-enrolled is not part of the healthcare system, and any of their subsequent work, such as referrals for diagnostic tests, prescribing medications, or referring patients to consultant specialists for either opinions or ongoing care, are not insured services. The specialist physicians would be paid at the, as I understand it, and please, I encourage everybody to check with the Medical Services Commission to get it directly from them, because we're not involved in that part. But they would be paid at the family or GP rate, and then would be eligible to bill a differential. Any referred work that's not an insured service, patients must be clearly told in advance that there would be that what the private charges would be, and that's probably the most that I can say about this. My understanding is that medications that are ordered, if the patient is eligible for pharmacare benefits, those would still kick in. It's a different piece of legislation that governs that, but to the extent that it covers what's a benefit under the Medical Services Commission and the Medicare Protection Act, there are definitely some challenges there. And as always, we expect patients to be given full and informed consent and to be made very clear what the charges would be in advance.
Thank you. The next question is really, there's an assumption here that there's a delay in the complaints processing and adjudication, and wondering what the college is doing to address these delays.
Maybe I might turn that one over to Graham for comment. Thank you.
I don't know where that perception comes from. Of course, that's going to be a subjective assessment based on you and people you're speaking with, but I assure you that the complaints department is working assiduously to deal with complaints as thoroughly and quickly as is possible, given the necessity for an adequate investigation, which is monitored by the Health Professions Review Board. I believe that we are doing the very best we can, but please be aware that the Ministry of Health has removed all timelines from the HPA as a move under COVID. And so the perception that things are proceeding less quickly than they might may be a facet of the need for adequacy. I will say, though, that by our most recent statistics, there has been a reduction in the length of time for adjudication of complaints by 25% year over year between.
Thank you. And I think you have answered another question there, Graham. This is not a question, Dr. Otter, but rather a compliment and recognition to you from Dr. Alan Redeman. A huge thank you to Dr. Otter for her years of stellar professional service, both as a clinician and as a physician leader. Huge kudos.
Thank you, Alan.
We have one, another one. Will a GP term be replaced with FP soon? It acknowledges our training and certification.
Yeah, so certainly in all the correspondence and work at the college, we do use the word family practice. The reason I use the word GP rates was because it's very much embedded in the current guide feed. So for those of you who are members of the Doctors of BC, I encourage you to have the Doctors of BC update that guide feed and get rid of the word GP.
Thank you. Next question. Can a physician obtain full licensure in BC without having a full-time BC address? In other words, can out-of-province physicians in Canada go through the process to be licensed and practice telemedicine here?
Yeah, sort of the multi-part question. We do have an expectation that physicians give us a business address, and if they are not in BC, they are listed as out of province. There are many moving parts to the healthcare system, and I have to say that the whole issue of virtual care provided into British Columbia by a registrant who is not licensed in BC is a matter of review with the Ministry of Health at the moment. There are obviously physicians who may hold a license in BC and then are in and out of BC. And if there's questions about that, I invite individuals to contact the registration department. I do want to make sure that people are aware of our virtual care standard, which is on the college website. The other important aspect is that if you are not in British Columbia, you are not able to access the PharmaNet database, and that is not a college rule. That is embedded within one of the pharmaceutical pieces of legislation. And again, if you have any questions about that, invite you to contact one of our college registering coaches, or you can contact the registration department.
The next question, has the college heard from registrants that they do not support the College of Family Physicians of Canada's push to move to a 3-year family medicine residency? And if so, would the college advocate with CFPC or Ministry of Health regarding this?
It is, we've not heard that, but I'm sure there's a certain disquiet with that. I would really encourage those people who are members of the College of Family Physicians of Canada to let your opinion on this be known by your member-based organization. However, advocating for the profession is really that's a role for the Doctors of BC, but I will take this as an opportunity to say that I will personally contact Anthony Knight, the CEO at the Doctors of BC, and let him know that I've heard some disquiet about that today during this webinar, and pass that on to him.
Thank you. Next question. How is the college planning to address the change from the HPA to the HPOA? Will there need to be many new hires to cover this expanded mandate? Second part, will it water down the ability of the college to protect the public by covering so many new health professions?
So just a point of clarification. The college will only be providing licensing and regulation for the existing classes of registration that we have today, which includes physicians, surgeons, and then the podiatric surgeons. Obviously, we brought on the associate physicians, but we're not going to be taking on any other professions. Under the current Health Professions Act, 11 colleges will be required to amalgamate into 2 colleges, and those include the what I would call the traditional allied health colleges, so occupational therapy, physical therapy, dietitians, massage therapy, many of those smaller colleges. So that does not impact our work. The government has provided a grant of $4.5 million to the BC Health Regulators, which is a society of the regulatory health colleges in British Columbia, to facilitate the transition from the work that we do under the Health Professions Act to the Health Professions and Occupations Act. I think it's early days. We do know that there will be expanded obligations under the Health Professions and Occupations Act. Just as an example, discrimination will now be considered a basis for a finding of professional misconduct. Similar to the Ontario College of Physicians and Surgeons, there will now be requirements for all regulatory colleges to provide counseling, including support to patients who've been harmed by registrants who've committed some of the most heinous professional misconducts, such as sexual abuse of the patient. That will also include discrimination. These are the kind of things that will be mapped out over the ensuing 18 months. We actually don't fully understand the full impact of that legislation on this college, but I want to assure all of the registrants that I do not see any barriers to the 267 pieces of legislation that I encourage you to read that will in any way fetter our ability to act in the public interest. So I think in many ways it may strengthen our ability to act.
Thank you. And colleague Dr. Dwight Harris seconds what Alan Ruddiman stated. Thanks to Dr. Otter for all the work she's done to guide the college these many years. Much appreciated your guidance and care of the public through years of leadership at the college.
Again, thank you very much. I'm very touched by kind words.
Next question. Also, thank you to the college for your excellent work. Wondering if in recognition of the inordinate burdens on our primary care colleagues, if the college might be taking another look at its policy around planning for a practitioner's death, which currently puts the burden of this squarely and solely entirely on the longitudinal care provider.
Yeah, I encourage people to look at that policy. We just really ask that you tell us what your contingency plan is. As I was looking at the in memoriam of the number of the physicians who passed away this past year, many of them died suddenly. They literally were at the office on Tuesday and were not on Wednesday. And we were very grateful that they shared with us their contingency plans. So we were able to call a colleague or a peer who'd been named in advance to help with the very difficult part of who's going to make sure that the medical office is directing patients to other consultants, is making sure that the medical records are dealt with appropriately, is retaining somebody to come in and deal with urgent lab incoming diagnostic work and such. So again, our registrant support coaches are there to help you map out what a contingency plan might be. I also know that there are tools available on the Doctors of BC website to help you with that. Thank you.
That was the last question we have. Maybe just give one or two. Oh, sorry. Yeah, one has just come in. Thank you for your time and hard work. We appreciate opening many opportunities for IMGs. Regarding the proposed associate physician license for IMGs who are not currently eligible for Royal College certification, we understand that the associate physicians will work under direct supervision of an attending physician. Is this considered as supervised work experience in Canada? And then can they apply for Royal College exam to get certification and obtain a provincial or independent license, or just continue working as associate physicians?
Yeah, so just a bit of a clarification. They work under the supervision and direction of an attending physician. That doesn't mean they're being continuously supervised. There will be lots of things that will be delegated to them that they will do independently, and for which the supervising physician will need to be satisfied that the person is competent to perform those professional activities. These positions are not training positions, they are service positions. And again, the route to being to getting into independent practice is completing a residency program. And associate physicians are not in training programs. They are service and service only. They're equivalent of house officers in the UK. And we know that the provinces that have well-developed associate physician programs that have been functioning for a few decades now, notably Manitoba and Alberta, have about 200 or 300 physicians who are performing in this category, but it is not a pathway to full license. It is a pathway to providing healthcare services in as a physician extender role, not independent role.
Thank you. The college requires registrants to be available by phone to patients 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, yet MSP doesn't pay registrants to have this availability. While I understand the college is not involved in billing or physician payment, but when the college is involved in making this requirement, shouldn't they also play a role in asking MSP to reimburse for this requirement?
Yeah, it's certainly a very significant issue, and in times of really significant health human resource shortages, it really does put a burden on physicians. We very much understand that. I'm pleased to report we had a very productive conversation with the board of the Doctors of BC last night, and we agreed that creating sustainable ways of providing that longitudinal support for patients, and I do mean that longitudinal, and affording some flexibility around how physicians can meet their common law duty of care was very much a topic of conversation, and we look forward to further opportunities to advance those. But at the end of the day, it's really the Doctors of BC that needs to be advocating for payment or payment reform, as the case may be, through their relationship with the Ministry of Health.
Thank you, Dr. Otter. Dr. Priestman, there are no further questions, so I think we can turn it back to you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, everybody, for your time and attending and joining us in this virtual meeting today. The minutes from this meeting will be posted on the college website, and we will now conclude the 2023 annual general meeting. Have a good day, and please continue to stay healthy and safe.